Who's that's watching? Yo, what up? Chill to explode. You guys know what vids I'm freaking checking out. It is another Mr. Nightmare. Let's go ahead and check it out. Like, we are kicking it for those that are watching. Let's get it.
Very few people experience something so traumatizing at a young age that it sticks with them forever. I'm one of those people. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. My older brother and I grew up in a broken household. Our mom raised us. Our dad was a deadbeat and disappeared out of our lives. Our mom worked 2 jobs to provide for us. She'd sometimes have to work night shifts, and would usually have our grandma stay at the house on nights that she had to work. My brother Austin is 2 years younger than me. We were fortunate enough to have our own bedrooms given the circumstances.
Nice.
We lived in a small house, but for the 3 of us, and on our mom's dime alone, it wasn't terrible. The area in which we lived wasn't amazing though. It was a night like any other. I can't remember if it was a school night or if it was a weekend. I don't remember any tiny details like that. But what I do remember is I was in the living room with my grandma. She was watching TV and I was playing with Legos on my Lego table. I was being loud and making a mess with them because I remember my grandma kept saying, "Alex, quiet down."
Yeah,
Austin
Alex,
was
be
already in bed.
quiet. Jeez.
My bedtime was 9:30. Given that it was probably approaching that time, I'm guessing this was a weekend night, otherwise my bedtime would have been earlier. The layout of the house was simple. Living room, dining room, and kitchen are all connected. And then there was a hallway which led to the bathroom and 3 bedrooms. Our mom's bedroom was at the end of the hall. Mine was in the middle. Our grandma would sleep in our mom's bed when she'd stay over to watch us. Eventually, I had to go to sleep. My grandma would always go to sleep early too. So right after saying goodnight to me, she would go to the bathroom to brush her teeth and stuff before going to sleep as well. I was never one to be afraid of the dark or anything. My mom says I used to be a really brave child. But that night, I woke up in the middle of the night. Something unusual for me because I remember myself being a very heavy sleeper. I heard something outside in the hallway, creaks in the floor. The wood floors in that house were always very creaky. Anytime someone walked down the hall, you'd hear it. I thought my grandma was going to the bathroom.
That ain't
However,
your grandma,
the creaking
chick.
didn't stop. It sounded like the creaks were moving back and forth. I got out of bed and went to the door to listen. Now I heard whispering. I was more confused than anything. I thought my grandma was talking to Austin. I opened the door and looked into the hallway, and what I saw still haunts me. There was a tall, naked, skinny woman leaning on the wall with her head between her arms.
What?
She was whispering stuff to herself.
Is it that movie, The
Like
Freaking Visit? What the hell?
Her head whipped around to look at me. I
girl,
screamed for my grandma like a little girl and slammed my door shut. There were pounds on my door, and the woman on the other side was screaming a name. "Jeremy, Jeremy, open the door."
Yo, there's
I kept
no
screaming
Jeremy,
as loud as I could for my grandma, and I heard her scream in the hallway. What I distinctly remember was my grandma screaming, "Get the fuck out of here."
Ooh.
The woman screamed, "Where is Jeremy?" My grandma was in her mid-60s at the time, and she was still pretty quick. She yelled at me to keep my door locked, and she managed to fend off this crazy woman as she also called the police at the same time. I don't know how she did it, but my grandma was one tough woman.
Come on.
The woman left the house screaming Jeremy, and after locking the door, my grandma came to hug both me and Austin, who was awake and also crying from the commotion.
Yo, can I have a grandma like her?
We all sat huddled together until the police came. By that time, my grandma told us to just go back to sleep. This simply was a matter of my grandma not locking one of the doors, mixed with living in an already shady area. That woman had to be on crack or something. Seeing what I saw at such a young age did a number on me. I couldn't sleep alone for a long time. It was this incident that really resulted in us moving out of that house not long after.
Oh, okay, yes. Like, people, lock your friggin' doors. Jeez.
Let me give you some context before the story begins. When I was 19 years old, I lived a pretty normal life. I had just finished high school the year before the story takes place. I had always been one for horror or anything, whether it was movies, games, jump scares, you name it, and I loved it. I never seemed to be afraid of anything, and I loved that. It allowed me to go and do things that made me appear tougher to girls who I was interested in at the time or who were interested in me. I thought of it almost like a superpower. My friend had always talked about this REM-induced real-life nightmare called sleep paralysis. I, however, had never experienced such a thing. My friend Megan suffered from extreme lucid dreaming. She explained to me several times about how certain stimulators or outside factors could play into her dreams and mold them into what could potentially be a heavenly experience full of fun and wonder, or could just as easily turn into a bone-chilling nightmare straight out of hell. Being the light sleeper I am, I saw no chance of it occurring, so I kind of just let it go right over my head. One night, Megan texted me and asked me to come over, as she had just suffered another so-called evil experience due to her sleep condition. When I arrived, I found her asleep again, seemingly peacefully. I took a seat on her stool that she had for her makeup dresser right by the window and started playing a game on my phone. 30 minutes or so went by, and I figured she was peacefully asleep and it would probably be okay for me to leave as long as I let her know that I stopped by as she requested. But suddenly, Megan awoke and started screaming. This was a different kind of scream though, a type of scream I had never heard before, especially from her. It was almost
that's
mumbling.
a freaking scream.
I don't know how else to describe it. Her eyes bulged open, and I ran over to her side. I asked her if she was having a bad dream. She started shaking. I grabbed a hold of her to try to calm her down, but the tremors grew. I asked her what was going on, but no response. I figured this was just another one of her so-called sleep paralysis episodes. I did my best to comfort her. After about 30 or so seconds went by, she regained full control of her body. I made sure she was okay, and I left back for my house, as it was almost 1 in the morning. Right as I got home, I received a very panicked text reading, "The hallucinations won't stop." I asked her to clarify what she meant, but no response. After about 30 minutes went by, I took it upon myself to head back over to her place. When I arrived, I noticed the illumination of red and blue covering her front porch and the surrounding road signs. I ran up to her house, desperately trying to find out what happened. As I approached the house, I noticed Megan was speaking with one of the officers on the scene. When I went up to talk to her, Megan and the officer walked me over to a more secluded area. What I found out still sends chills up my spine to this day.
Just tell me.
Apparently when I had went over to Megan's that night, she wasn't asleep at all. She was pretending to be. Evidently right behind me was a tall, skinny, homeless man hiding in her closet. Police had also found a very large kitchen knife on him as well. The theory to this day is Megan thought she was having an episode, when in reality, this very real man was quietly creeping towards her in her bedroom. Supposedly when I had entered her house, it was enough to spook the man into hiding, and my presence was enough to keep him hidden.
Chicken, like screw
this
off.
gave Megan the time to call 911 and report the situation, which in turn resulted in the police arriving almost immediately after I had left. Thankfully, the man was taken into custody rather quickly. To this day, I don't know what to think about that night, other than I could have very easily saved her life simply by keeping her company during what I thought was a very stressful situation, which in turn could have resulted in some very scary and heinous acts that would have taken place if I had been there any later. I hope I never experienced such a thing. That would be what finally trips my fear factor, without a doubt.
Yeah, same. Anybody. Like, come on now. Off of a freaking horror movie. No joke.
Around 10 years ago, I moved out of my mom's house into my first apartment in the city of Chicago.
Okay.
The place was a nice 3-bedroom apartment on the south side of the city in a friendly neighborhood by the University of Illinois. I lived with 2 roommates, Tom and Mike. Mike was a good friend of mine, while Tom was a good friend of Mike's, who I had not met prior, although we ended up getting along just fine. One night, about a month after moving in, I met up with a few friends of mine for drinks at a bar more in the center of the city, around 10 minutes from my place.
Yes, what's up?
It was a good time, and I ended up getting slightly drunk before getting into a cab at 1 a.m. and heading home.
Well, at least you're not driving.
Upon walking into my apartment, I noticed that Tom's door was open, showing that he was staying at his girlfriend's place, while Mike's door was closed with the light from his TV shining underneath the crack. I made my way to my bedroom and put on my own TV before lying down to prepare for sleep. After around 10 minutes, I heard my doorbell ring. Half asleep, I woke up confused as it was 1:30 in the morning, so I ignored it. A few seconds later, the doorbell rang again, and then again a few seconds after that. It's important to mention that my roommate Mike had a good amount of side cash by dealing weed to a few people. He He was also a huge stoner himself, so the idea that he fell asleep while waiting for a late-night customer to come over was not out of the realm of possibility. With this in mind, I went over to my intercom and asked who was there. A girl's voice answered back, "It's Emma, I'm here to see Mike." Thinking that my suspicions had been confirmed, I exited out of my front door and headed down the stairs. The door to the outside of our apartment building was made of tall glass, so you could easily identify any potential visitors.
Congrats on being in the freaking dumb
Here,
awards,
I saw
idiot.
an attractive, college-age blonde girl with glasses waiting patiently outside. I had never seen this person before. However, she appeared to be non-threatening, and besides having random customers over to grab weed, Mike would also have some random girls over to hook up with from time to time. Because of this, I let my guard down slightly and cracked the door open. The girl then repeated what she had said moments earlier over the intercom. "Hi, I'm here to see Mike." I replied, "Okay, he's here, just follow me up." And I held the door open for her. She grabbed the handle, and I turned around to head back up the stairs. As I was walking back up, I quickly noticed that this Emma girl was not following me up. I glanced over my shoulder and saw that she was still standing outside holding the door open, only now she was staring off to her right, almost as if waiting for someone. At this moment, a tidal wave of fear crashed over me as I realized something horrible was more than likely about to happen.
Stupid.
I continued
That's
walking
what you
up to my
are.
place, quicker now. After turning the corner of the stairs, I heard the door swing open and then heavy footsteps running up the stairs behind me.
Look what you've done.
I looked over my shoulder again, and what I saw shook me to my core. A tall, gangly man with sunken-in eyes, greasy long hair down to his shoulders, was running up the stairs straight at me. He was wearing a sleeveless black t-shirt, and apart from the cheap-looking tribal tattoos I saw creeping up his arms, I noticed he was also holding what looked like a lead pipe in his right hand. At this moment, my body shot full of adrenaline as I turned around and raced back up the stairs and into my apartment. I turned around to close the door. I saw the man, who was now only a few feet from entering my apartment, cock the pipe over his head. With less than a second to spare, I slammed the door and locked it in one swift motion. Immediately after, I heard the thud of the pipe hit my door. I stood facing the now closed door.
He's like, "Oh shoot, what did I do? Oh no!"
While shouting obscenities at me. He eventually gave up and ran down the stairs and out the front door. I ran into Mike's room to wake him up. After telling him what exactly had just went down, he responded by telling me that yes, he knew a blonde girl named Emma, only he had just met her earlier the same day.
Wow.
Apparently, while I was out with my friends, the doorbell rang while Mike was home alone. Instead of going down to let her in himself, Mike buzzed her up after just hearing her name, with his train of thought being him thinking that she was a friend of mine. When she reached the door to our unit, he opened it and let her in. He said it seemed like she was confused, mentioning that she was looking for someone named Tim. Mike responded by saying his own name, and that no one named Tim lived here. He mentioned she stayed near the entrance of the unit and kept reaching behind her to make sure the door stayed open before leaving only a few moments later. After hearing this, my theory is that these same people came earlier in the day, and not expecting to have someone just let them up through the buzzer, the girl made the mistake of forgetting to keep the door to the building open, rendering the attacker unable to enter during this first attempt.
Yeah.
Either way, we both got extremely lucky that night. We did call the police, who arrived and asked for more information about what happened. They asked if there was anyone we knew who might want to do us harm, and we answered no, which was the truth, as this seemed to be a completely random attack. The cops left soon after, saying that there was nothing much they could do. We never saw that Emma girl or her scumbag partner again.
Story 4. Yo, see, I would not have done that freaking mess, obviously.
This story happened to me 4 years ago
no.
when I was in my mid-20s. This whole experience will probably scar me for life, and it's still vividly imprinted in my mind.
Oh, to this day. Okay.
The day was the 15th of June, and I had the house to myself because my parents were on a 2-week vacation in France. It was sometime after dusk, probably around 8 p.m., and the weather was scorchingly hot. Believe me when I say I was sweating my ass off with just my tank top and shorts on. The heat was so unbearable that I allowed in some fresh air, opening all the living room and bedroom windows, planning on closing them right before hitting the hay.
He's like, yo,
Now,
this is
before
freaking
fast
BS.
forwarding, I must mention that I was feeling extremely exhausted. On that same day, I had taken 3 exams in the morning and played a volleyball match in the afternoon. Thus, once I ate my dinner, while browsing social media in my room, I collapsed into bed without even realizing. I woke up at around 3 a.m. to the muffled sounds of thunderbolts and a draft of cold, fresh air hitting my face. A strong wind was blowing, and all of the shutters left open were noisily banging. Still drowsy, I flicked on the lamp, but the light wouldn't turn on. I checked the plug using my phone flashlight, but everything was fine. I begrudgingly climbed out of bed and looked out my bedroom window. There were menacing, rainy black clouds in the horizon. A typical late-night summer storm was approaching. Given that every lamppost in the street was off, I instantly knew there had been a blackout. Phone flashlight in hand, I dizzily headed down the hallway to shut the windows closed before rain started pouring down.
You so freaking
I got to the last window, though. I noticed the mosquito net lifted up. This struck me as weird.
Like, I get you're
I was
freaking
quite
hot,
positive I
okay,
hadn't left
sure,
it
but I'm
that
just
way.
like, really, man? Like,
Getting a little
come on.
paranoid, I turned behind me to shine the flashlight around the living room and check my surroundings. The furniture was still in place. No drawers or closet doors left open, no decorative objects missing or moved in unfamiliar positions. Everything seemed normal. I briefly peeked my head out of my window to look outside.
No.
Trees swaying in the howling wind,
jeez.
leaves shaking in a frenzy. Powerful display of nature's force, but still nothing remotely suspicious. Maybe the mechanism is faulty or the strong wind somehow pushed it up. Against my better judgment, I convinced myself it was useless to lose sleep over it. Feeling relieved, I closed the shutters and started walking back to my bedroom, eager to get a decent night's rest. Little did I know that night would be anything but pleasant. I happened to casually turn my head to the flight of stairs connected to the attic, when a vivid burst of light flashing from up there caught my eyes. I paid it no mind. The attic was adorned with huge glass windows, so it was no wonder to see light spreading across the room.
Yeah.
It was probably a
please,
sheet
you
lightning.
should be
I
fine.
kept walking, subconsciously waiting for the thunder to come.
Ain't nobody there.
It never did. I stopped in my tracks. Given that the flash I saw was powerful and bright, the lightning had to be pretty close. So why couldn't any rumbling noise be heard? I started to think, maybe it wasn't lightning. What if it was a flashlight? As doubt crept in, my heart began to race. I quickly put two and two together, and now the strange occurrence of the mosquito net left up made much more sense. The nightmarish realization hit me that an intruder could have broken into my house. At first, I panicked. Did they hear me shutting the windows? Were they carrying any weapons? Did they plan on just robbing my house?
Of course,
They also
intruders
had worse
carry
intentions.
weapons.
Normally, I would
Hello.
call my parents to deal with it, but since they were away, it was all on me now. While those sickening thoughts were swirling in my mind, the distinct sound of a doorknob being twisted and turned made me instantly snap out of my catatonic state. I shot my head to face the living room entrance, and through the glass frame, I spotted a shadowy figure just a few inches outside of the front door. There was a person standing there, most likely an accomplice of the guy upstairs. Words are not enough to describe how powerless and defenseless I felt. Despite the overwhelming fear, I did my best to keep my cool. Trying to make as little noise as possible, I tiptoed in the direction of the stairs leading down to the basement, which was directly connected to the garage. I figured I could safely escape from there. While I was making my descent down, still using my phone as a source of light, I dialed
Oh, come
911
on.
and, speaking as softly as possible,
Good.
I informed the operator about what just happened.
Hopefully they're
He
not
tried
stupid.
to calm me down and reassured me that the police would be there in less than 10 minutes. He also added I should lock myself in a safe room and wait for the officers to show up. I was about to reply that I could easily sneak outside through the garage door, when all of a sudden I lost the call.
Oh my
I
gosh.
immediately checked the phone and realized that down there I had no signal. As if it wasn't enough, I also noticed the battery was almost dead.
Oh my god, yo, what
Once I
could
reached
possibly
the
go
basement,
wrong?
I nervously assessed what to do. I could try and find an emergency flashlight, but now I was so close to escaping from the house that I didn't want to waste time rummaging
Just
through the
freaking
drawers.
go, yo.
Besides, I was mindful that the intruders upstairs could have heard me, so in the heat of the moment, I exited the basement as fast as I could. Nonetheless, while making my way towards the garage door, I got a feeling in my gut telling me I was being watched. I don't even know why. Maybe my sixth sense had picked up on something. But I pointed my phone to illuminate the back seats of my car, and there he was. A man's face stuck to the rearview mirror. A disgusting, revolting face with dead, bulgingly wide eyes and a malicious, yellowish grin spreading across its cheeks. He kept staring at me,
are you?
so intently it almost looked like he was piercing into my soul. He slid his dirty hand against the glass, waving me hello in an unnatural slow motion.
Oh, jeez.
And at that point, it happened. My phone battery died, turning off the flashlight and leaving me in the middle of a total darkness. I felt my heart in my throat. I had never been more scared in my entire life. My whole body was quivering and shaking in fear.
Yo, you better fight.
I heard the car door opening. I lost it.
Why didn't you lock it?
I screamed like a little girl as I somehow managed to unlock the garage door and bolt outside, climbing up the driveway ramp. By that time, heavy rain had started pouring down. I hopped over the gate and ran to the nearest house, yelling like a lunatic for the neighbors to rush outside. They came out in shock, and I explained to them the whole situation, almost out of breath and soaking wet. In the meantime, I heard sirens in the distance. 2 police cars rolled down the street, and I practically ran into the officer's arms, screaming that there were 3 strangers in my house. 4 agents went into my house, guns drawn, while another one took my description of the events. Those 3 men were all gone, though, and to this day, I don't think they've ever been caught. Some antiques which held some value were stolen. However, I must say it was no big deal for my family. For the remainder of the night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept tossing and turning, jumping at the slightest sounds, ruminating relentlessly on the horrific experience. But I kid you not, another chilling surprise was lying in wait. When morning came, I spotted a small piece of paper sticking out of the edge of my bed. I picked it up and went frozen stiff. The following words were written. Bye-bye, beauty. You look cute when you sleep.
Oh my gosh, whatever. I'd be like, hey, how does my middle finger look to you, huh?
When my cousin Cody and I were in our early 20s, we went on a handful of camping trips around Colorado. This happened, I believe, when I was 22 and he was 23, and it happened in Arapahoe Forest. It was my first time camping there, not Cody's though. It was in the middle of the week. Our jobs allowed us to have off days in the middle of the week, and we'd often go on our campouts then to avoid traffic and crowds. I always let Cody take charge on these trips. He's the Eagle Scout, not me.
He's like, leave me out of this, okay?
And we set foot into the woods from there. After about 15 minutes of hiking deeper into the woods, we found a good spot to set up camp. A good spot, meaning a big enough clearing to fit 2 tents, the portable stove, and a campfire. The first thing we did was unpack our stuff and set up our tents. Cody has always been a lot quicker than me in pitching a tent. He does it in only a few minutes. It always takes me over 20 minutes. Or rather, it always took me over 20 minutes, as I haven't been camping out in the wilderness since this. The next thing we did was create a ring of stones for a fire, and then gathered some sticks and wood. He did bring some fire starter and a lighter, so I guess we kind of cheated, but oh well.
Whatever.
It was at the point in the day when the sun was going down. We had a fire going, and now Cody was grilling up some steak and burgers.
Ooh.
One thing about Cody is he always went all out with the food on these trips.
Yes.
And he's a really good cook, so I always trusted him with feeding us. Of course, we had our bear spray in case the smell of the food would attract a black bear, which Cody always said was very unlikely. He always says the real thing you gotta worry about in the middle of the woods is other people. As we ate our steak and burgers, we cracked open some beers and had some classic rock playing on the speaker. If you've never been camping, you don't understand how good of a vibe moments like this are. In the wilderness with a friend or family member and some beers, reminiscing about good times and vibing to music. As it got dark, we started playing card games on this little folding platform table we brought specifically for cards. After playing more traditional card games, we started playing Uno. And this was when we heard something out in the woods. I paused the song on my phone so that the speaker would go silent. It was clear now. We heard a person humming and footsteps from beyond the trees in the pitch blackness of the forest.
Heck nah.
Cody urged me to find the flashlight. I tried, but by the time I found it, the sounds had faded away. I asked Cody if that was something to be concerned about, and he said it definitely was unusual for someone else to be this deep in the woods, let alone creepily walking by a campsite with an active campfire humming loudly. I was a bit shaken, and I saw Cody was too. We went back to playing cards with the music much
Yeah,
lower
like
now.
nothing happened. Yeah,
When
go
we least
back.
expected it, a big stick landing in the middle of our campsite made us both jump out of our skin. It didn't fall from a tree. This thing was thrown at us by someone. Cody started yelling something along the lines of, "Whoever's out there messing with us, get a life and f*** off." Then,
Too bad that don't
footsteps
work.
could be heard once again in the distance. They were walking away from us. I said we should pack up
You're
camp
like,
and
yeah,
move
you
somewhere
better
else.
go.
He said absolutely not in the dark. We both had bear spray, and he advised to just keep it next to me in my tent when we go to sleep. It was the closest thing to ranged self-defense weapons we had. We kept hearing sounds like tree branches cracking in the distance, sounds that you would never expect an animal to be making. Someone was out there, maybe multiple people, that much was clear. We had to go to sleep eventually, so we agreed that maybe we should take turns staying up to keep watch to make sure that no one comes to our campsite and steals anything, or worse. Cody agreed to take first watch. He said he'd stay up and read his book. So I crawled into my tent and then my sleeping bag and went to sleep. Waking up in the middle of the night while camping is normal. You're in a cold, outdoor environment in an uncomfortable sleeping bag. Any number of things could wake you up. I didn't yet know what woke me up. I was still in a fog. My brain didn't feel fully woken up yet.
Even if I tried to sleep, I
looked
wouldn't
up
sleep.
and saw a head peering into my tent. It looked like Cody. I rubbed my eyes, but really it was the darkness that was preventing me from seeing anything of his face.
Yo, shut up, nah.
I said, "Cody?" thinking he was waking me up to take my turn of keeping watch.
That ain't Cody.
I said groggily, "Is it my turn?" I stared at the head peering at me in my sleeping bag, slowly growing more awake every second. Then I heard the zipper to the tent quickly zip up, and his head disappeared. I laid back down in my sleeping bag, but only for a second. I suddenly had some weird moment of clarity, where I shot to an upright position and listened as the footsteps walked away. "Cody," I said. He didn't answer. I unzipped my tent to peek out to the campsite. The fire was dead. Cody wasn't out there. I went over to Cody's tent, which was zipped up. I unzipped it and looked inside to see Cody fast asleep in his sleeping bag. I got chills, goosebumps, whatever you want to call it. I almost shit myself at the realization.
No.
I started shaking him awake, and when he finally awoke, I told him someone's
No
here
kidding.
at the campsite. It took him a minute to come back to reality just like I did, but when he did, he grabbed his bear spray. He said he must have dozed off while reading. He said I should sleep in the tent with him tonight, but to do that, I'd need my sleeping bag. He came outside of the tent with me and stood watch as I ran to my tent to grab my sleeping bag. In my tent, grabbing my sleeping bag, I heard that goddamn humming again from outside. I grabbed it, and Cody whispered at me to hurry up.
Yeah, hurry up.
I said, "You hear that too?" He said yes. We both got back in his tent and zipped it up, with our cans of bear spray by our sides. I tell you, in those moments, I wanted nothing more than for a bear to come and save the day. The hours dragged on as I stayed up while Cody slept. After 3 long, horrible hours, I woke him up and we switched. When Cody woke me up, it was almost dawn. There was light outside. So we packed everything up, and by the time we were done, there was plenty of light to hike back to the car. While we could have driven somewhere else and had another night of camping elsewhere, neither of us were feeling it anymore. This was a haunting experience, and I think we both just wanted to be in the safety of our houses. It's been 6 years since this happened, and he's hit me up a few times since then about camping, but I haven't really had interest since
He's
this
like,
experience.
nope, I'm good.
They're just too scary. Why was someone out there stalking our campsite? And the sight of that person's head in the dark, just looking into my tent, it was straight up from a nightmare.
Freaky.
I may never go camping again, honestly.
Yeah. As you should not. Hello, come on, I'm just saying. Saw something like that, like, heck to the friggin' no.
When my friends and I rented a beach house in Florida, I never could have expected how things would have turned out. It was the 4 of us in a cramped car driving down there. The house was directly on the beach. It was on this road that had the bay in front of the house across the street, and then in the backyard was literally the beach. There were some huge houses on this road, and some smaller, more normal-looking ones. This was one of the more modest-looking ones. It had 4 bedrooms, so a bedroom for each of us. The houses were spaced out on this road, creating a sense of privacy. And the whole time we were unloading the car out front, not a single car passed by on this road. The interior of the house was decent. It wasn't spectacular, but it was modest, clean, and the owners were really pushing a beach theme with the wall decor. I guess it would make sense considering the location. There was even a decorative surfboard in one corner of the living room behind the TV. The living room looked out to the back deck, which then looked out to the beach. The view was amazing. The deck wasn't elevated very high off the ground. It was just 2 steps down and onto the sand. We all claimed our bedrooms. I managed to get one of the rooms with a view of the beach. First thing we did after settling in was, of course, walking outside and laying on the beach. We all went in the water at one point and then played football. We were definitely on the beach for a few hours. We seemed to be the only ones on the beach apart from this older-looking couple way down the beach. Afterwards, we went out to eat and then started bar hopping in the town area. When we Ubered back, it was dark out. We went outside on the beach to fuck around and play late-night football while we were kind of drunk. As I was running to grab the ball after missing a catch, I noticed something in the water. The moon reflecting on the ocean was the only reason I could see it.
A person?
I said, "What the fuck is that?" out loud, and then realized it was a person standing in the water, about waist deep.
Not surprised.
My friends looked over and said they saw it too.
Hello.
It was only a little weird because of the time. It was like past midnight, but hey, if a local wants to go for a midnight swim, that's their business. We then went to sit on the deck and drink beers for a while until we got tired, and one by one, everyone started going inside to go to sleep. My friend John and I were the last ones out there. I had been every once in a while glancing in the direction I saw that person before in the water, just out of curiosity, and so eventually when I shot a glance in that direction, I spotted someone standing on the beach. They appeared to be just standing there facing us. It was kind of creepy. Maybe a neighbor. I didn't want to be rude, but I wondered if it was the same person. We tried to ignore it, but John was facing that person, and after a while, he said they were still just standing there facing us.
Yeah, they like to see you.
I stood up and looked over and saw he was right. I yelled out, "Is everything okay?" John asked, "Why'd you do that?" I honestly didn't know what I was expecting. They didn't even reply anything, though. We were officially creeped out, so we went inside.
Yo, y'all are doing psycho.
The other two, Travis and Liam, were already in their rooms, probably knocked out from drinking. So John and I decided to just call it a night too, so that we could have a full day tomorrow.
And see if they're useless or
not. I had to guess. It was 12:30 to 1 a.m., which was honestly on the earlier side, but we were all burnt out from the long day. I went to my room after brushing my teeth. I looked out the window wanting to take a look to the ocean before crawling into bed. This is where the creepiness factor escalated substantially, because there was now someone standing in front of the back deck, facing the house.
Totally not creepy.
It felt like they were facing my window. The figure of the person appeared to be male, considering the slightly larger frame. It was undoubtedly the same person from before. I called John's name. He didn't reply. So I ran to his room and banged on his door, telling him to come out. He came out pretty quickly, and I led him to my window to look outside. But now the person was gone. I swore to him that the person from earlier was just standing as still as before right in front of our deck. He believed me. We weren't about to go outside and look around, though. I took one more look to make sure that they were still gone, and then I shut the blind to the bedroom window. But as I lay awake in bed, rolling from side to side, trying to sleep, I just couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still outside. Who was that person? Why were they creeping around?
I said. Oh, jeez, no.
My thoughts were interrupted by the sickening sound of a fist knocking on the bedroom window. I felt like my insides just shriveled up and my heart completely dropped out of my body. I laid silent and frozen. Moments later, another light set of knocks on the glass. I didn't dare lift the blind, though. I couldn't gather the courage to. I almost yelled, "Who is it?" But I stopped myself.
Complete idiot.
Instead, I ran out to the living room, screaming for everyone to wake up. Everyone, one by one, came out of their rooms. No one was at the window when we checked. All four of us went out to the deck and turned on the lights to the deck. We looked out onto the beach and didn't see anyone. We also checked the front and sides of the house.
Not a single thing.
John and I had to explain to the other two what they missed when they fell asleep. We kept the backyard lights on that night. The next day, John and I went to the two nearest neighbors and asked them if they had also experienced someone knocking on their windows or doors. One of the neighbors told us a genuinely freaky encounter he had a week earlier. Someone knocked on their door in the middle of the night, and when he asked who it was, they wouldn't answer and just kept knocking, so he didn't answer the door. I'm not sure if it was connected, but if it was, that just makes this even scarier. We spent the rest of the day on the beach, exploring nearby towns, and hitting bars. Nothing happened that night. We left the next day. I still wonder what I would have seen if I had lifted the blind.
Something that won't be pretty, obviously. Like, hello, it was so connected.
I was 9 years old when this happened. For whatever reason, I was home alone one night, so I was playing video games upstairs in my room. I wasn't allowed to answer the door to anyone when I was home alone. Whenever I was left alone, it wasn't for long. My mom would just be out grocery shopping or something like that. I was playing Metroid Prime on my GameCube. I used to be obsessed with that game.
I think I know that game.
I heard the house phone downstairs start to ring. My mom always told me to pick up the phone if it rang, in case it was her calling. So I hurried downstairs, and by maybe the fourth ring, I picked up. The caller ID was from my mom's cell phone. She said, "Sweetie, can you come outside and help with the groceries?" I replied, "Mom?" She said back, "Yes." I felt like something sounded off with her voice. You obviously know your own mom's voice, and so even at such a young age, when I was questioning why it didn't sound like her, I said, "Why do you sound like
ain't
that?"
your mommy.
She replied, "Like what,
It ain't
sweetie?"
your mommy, kid.
And I hung up. My mom would never use the word sweetie like that, especially twice in a matter of seconds. The phone rang again, and my mom's number came up on the caller ID again. I ignored it. For some reason, my heart was racing. I was nervous. I sat in the kitchen, waiting to see if the phone would ring a third time, and it did. It took a couple minutes before the third ringing, but when I checked the caller ID, this time it was a different number. I picked up, and a man's voice on the other end said, "Hey James,
How did that freaking fool got her freaking number?
It's your dad. I'm outside." All I could mutter out was a weak, "What?" The man said, "I'm outside. I have a lot to explain." I hung up right then and there. My dad died when I was 3. I have no memories of him. My suspicion was in fact true that the first voice I heard was not my mom's. The phone rang again, and then again after that. I ignored it each time. I couldn't even call my mom because someone clearly had her phone.
BS.
Then things took a turn for the worse when there were knocks at the front door. This went from a "someone has my mom's phone" situation to a "someone is outside the house" situation. My mom would not be knocking on the door. She'd have a key, obviously.
Oh my gosh.
I peered around the wall of the kitchen to look at the front door. I heard a man's muffled voice on the other side saying my name. He was saying, "It's your dad." He rang the doorbell, and then I heard him start attempting to open the door. I did something that no 9-year-old should ever have to do, and that was grabbing the phone and calling 911. The 911 operator asked me what I imagined to be some pretty standard questions. Most importantly, telling me to wait in a bathroom or other room with a lockable door until the police get there. The bathroom is on the first floor of the house. I hid in there with the lights off. Whoever was outside came to the window and tried pulling it open. I heard their entire struggle.
And failed.
Then they must have moved to the next window. I think they tried every window and door in the house. If anything were to have been unlocked, this story would have had a very different outcome. They must have given up at some point before the police arrived. And I say they, because clearly there were 2 people involved in this, a man and a woman.
Yes.
They both could have been out there for all I know.
Pretend
the operator told me that the police are at the front door now, and it's safe to go meet them there.
Where the hell is the freaking mom?
Only when I opened the door to the police was when I hung up the phone. They did a quick investigation inside and outside of the house, and asked me where my mom was supposed to be, and if my mom knew anyone who might want to hurt us. I'm sure I said I thought she was grocery shopping or something, and not that I know of. My mom returned home with my little sister in a panic when she saw the police cars out front. My mom's phone was stolen, which was already clear. I'm sure that our address, home phone number, and other personal information was stored somewhere on the phone, easily accessible, though how they knew my name, I'm not exactly sure. Something on my mom's phone must have given it away. It was an old Nokia flip phone. Who stole it was a mystery. But my mom's phone background was a picture of her with my little sister and I. This could have been an indication to some disgusting, creepy couple out there that the owner of this phone was a single mom with 2 young kids, and they tried to use that as a way of tricking me into leaving the house, which is absolutely disgusting and horrific. The phone must have been destroyed after the failed attempts at trying to lure me outside. Things were a little different after this. My mom wouldn't leave me alone anymore at night. Not until I was a few years older, at least.
Yeah. Jeez, no. Peeps, let's watch this. You guys know that was obviously my reaction to both of the freaking Mr. Nightmare vids I freaking checked out. And for those that have seen my other Mr. Nightmare vids reactions, you guys should know what I have to freaking say. Nah, people, you don't have to be too friendly, okay? Guys, that was it for this freaking vid. Chills I-XPLODE, you guys know I am out. Like I said, I'll be doing more reactions to Mr. Nightmare vids. Don't know when, but it'll happen this channel again. So stay tuned for those that are interested. You guys know. You guys freaking know. Until next time, for those that are interested and want to see more, you peeps that's watching, stay freaking lit. Deuces.